All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Within Tolerance. And today we have Tom Lipton on. A lot of you guys submitted some awesome questions, so I'm really curious to see Tom's answers to all of these. And without further ado, Tom, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us, how did you get into machining? How, the jobs you worked, where you work now, YouTube, everything you can think of, just go for it.
Sure. No problem. So I don't know. A lot of people, some people have my book, and there's some history in the book, but I kind of hatched as a welder to start with. That was the first thing. My first involvement in metalwork was in welding. My dad taught me how to weld when I was about 9 years old, something like that, in our basement in Berkeley. He had a little business building ceramic potter's wheels, and there was a little bit of welding on them, and so I used to help him out. And one day he came home and he had like an extra welding hood with him, and I said, "Oh, well, who's that for? Is that for mom or what?" He goes, "No, it's for you." And I went, "Ugh." So I learned how to stick weld, and we had a little, I don't know, it was kind of a wood shop mostly in the basement of our house, but I had a bench grinder and a welding machine and radial arm saw and a few other things, and so we used to putter around down there, and so that's kind of my first taste of a shop. And then I don't know, so kind of in high school, I gravitated towards metal shop and kind of got involved in that, and actually got a job while I was still in high school doing welding work. It was a little ironworks place, and they built spiral staircases and handrails and metal fencing and stuff like that. So got in, excuse me, got into welding, and then um, worked in a bunch of welding shops. I served in an apprenticeship as a sheet metal worker in San Francisco. So I was a union member in San Francisco in the sheet metal union, and did that for quite a few years. And that's where I really kind of, I don't know, became enamored by really high skill level stuff. Sheet metal is pretty demanding, at least precision sheet metal is. And so attention to detail and precision kind of come with that. And one of these old guys that I work with, his name was Doug. He uh, he built a sailboat in his spare time, and through that shop basically. So we had this Thursday night program that you guys may have remember from my book. But every Thursday night, we did personal projects after hours, and it was kind of sanctioned by the company, and it was kind of actually pretty awesome learning tool that the company was willing to kind of take that risk, I guess, is how you characterize it, right? And let people do that. So the rules were, you couldn't leave stuff laying around there, right? And you couldn't disturb any work in progress, and you paid for any major materials. So you could use little bits from the scrap bin and all that, and that was no big deal. But if you needed like a half a sheet of something, for a project, you had to pay for it. So did tons and tons of stuff Thursday nights, and it I kind of recreated it in the shops that I managed later on. That it was an opportunity for people to try things that, honestly, as a foreman, I wasn't willing to let them try on the company nickel, right? So, oh, hey, you want to learn the lathe or whatever? Okay, well, I'll show you some stuff, and then you can try some stuff on your own. But you're not very good right now. I can't pay you to do that during the day, right? But so it was a way for guys to build skills, and guys like us, shop guys. There's all The old guy used to say, "Oh, there's a bracket in everybody's life," right? And and that's how he used to say it, right? So he goes, if you don't give these guys a place, an appropriate place and time to do the work, they're going to sneak and do the work, because these guys, everybody's got a bracket in their life, right? And he's right. And you see it in shops that are closed down. Guys, on the lowdown are doing work, and whatever. So, but so, we just allowed it, and same rules, let people buy materials and things like that, and kind of encourage that. And it's a great skill building thing. So I don't know, did the sheet metal thing for a number of years. And then I got a, I got a job at Clorox, the bleach guys. And that was another change. So that was a real R&D facility that was kind of an engineering shop that, um, fabrication. We were designing packaging equipment. We supported a whole R&D facility and all the stuff that was going on there. I got tons of killer stories from that. And but there was a machine shop attached to that. And then as fabricators, I started there as a fabricator, but we were allowed to go into the machine shop and use the machines, right? So now I had done some machining at that point. Um, I I had a little lathe in my garage that I kind of got out of order there. Sorry, but I had a little lathe in my garage. That was my first exposure to machining. 1915 Prentice lathe that I bought for $250 from a guy I was working for, and sold it about, I don't know, 15 years later for $250. And so that was kind of my first machining. And then I did some night school machining things. So by the time I got to Clorox, I'd done some machining, but I was by no means any good at it. But there was an old Dutch guy there at Clorox that really I learned a ton from, and super nice guy. And all these guys are dead, by the way. So, so when you corner an old guy that knows something, stick to them like glue, because that's what they do. They die, and then all the everything they know just goes poof and it's gone. So, so anyway, so we worked together for quite a few years actually, and so yeah, I'll tell you a Clorox story. We had let's see, what's a good one there. So we worked on a lot of different things. A real interesting project. A lot of people don't know that Clorox owns a bunch of food companies. So they own KC Masterpiece barbecue sauce. They used to own a restaurant chain. They own Hidden Valley Ranch salad dressing, for example, stuff like that. So anyway, in the shop there, we were working on an onion ring project that was kind of cool. And so onion rings, there's different grades of onion rings, and the top A1 grade is the ring segments that are breaded and fried, right? But that's only a small portion of the usable onion. So the idea was, um, now if you chop the onion up into little bits and you make paste out of it, and then you squeeze them into rings, that's like a much lower grade. It's not a premium grade because they have to use binders and fillers to kind of keep it connected together. Well, we were working on a way to do the binding under high pressure at really low temperatures. And so we made a bunch of equipment and that I help with, and it was pretty cool because we got to test our results in the shop. So in the middle of, on one side of the shop, we were pressing these onion rings out. On the other side, a guy had a little fryer, and we'd take them over in the fryer, and then everybody'd sit around and eat the onion rings, right? And we'd sample them, right? And then, and anyway, it was kind of fun. And
Sounds like a pretty good day at work.
yeah, it was pretty good. And then, and on that same project, we had to design a machine that actually oriented onions. So you look at an onion, right, and it's got an axis, right? So there's some axis through it, and so to slice it up, to make automated equipment to slice the onion up, you have to get it into a particular orientation, right, so that the machine can do its job and cut it up properly, right? Um, and the way they do it now is they have a line of humans that basically grab the onions, look at them, look at that axis, orient it and then drop it into a little cradle, right? And then it goes into the machine. Well, so you got, I don't know, 10 or 15 people feeding one machine, right? So the task was to,
Gee.
yeah, right. You'd be surprised how many processes are still like that. Broccoli's done that way still. There's a bunch of stuff that's still done that way. Um, but anyway, we built this onion orienter, and so we dump onions in it, and the nickname for it, this was when the Scud missiles were the, this is kind of the Gulf War kind of period, right? And we called it the Scud missile launcher because it was kind of angled up like that, and had this weird conveyor belt, and it had these little stabbers that came in from the side. So the onion would spin and on this conveyor belt, and it would kind of hold it in place. And the onion would change orientation, and it would start to rotate around its center of gravity, which happens to be typically on its axis, right? These little stabbers would go pop and stab into the side of the thing, and then it would take it away and do that. So we worked on that thing for months and months. So all kinds of pretty kooky projects, and so that's a couple from Clorox there. And so anyway, I worked there for, I don't even remember now how long it was, but one of my customers there kind of approached me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about starting my own company, and would you be interested in working for me?" And he was a nice guy, and I said, "Oh, I don't know. What are you going to do? Who are your customers? What kind of work you planning on doing?" That kind of stuff. And he's like, "Well, I'm not sure yet. It's going to be Clorox type work, things like that." And I go, "Okay, well, let me know when you get a little closer. We can talk." So I don't know. He came back a year later or something like that and said, "Hey, I'm ready to do it." And I said, "Well, okay." He goes, "Well, you want to come and work for me?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "I'll take a couple weeks of vacation, and I'll come over and I'll do some work for you, and I'll get to know you and you can get to know me." And he goes, "Oh, you don't want to just like quit and come over?" I go, "No." I mean, I got a pretty good gig here. I don't want to blow it. Right. And I said, "Honestly, I don't know how it would work out. Right. So I'm not willing to throw that out, just on a whim." Right. Well, anyway, I ended up going over to him, and Clorox was our biggest customer. So that little company, I ran that company. I was the general manager there. I was employee number one, and we grew that company. I think the biggest we were was 24 people, something like that. And I don't know,
Wow.
couple million a year in sales, something like that. And we designed and built scientific test equipment mainly for consumer product testing. So now I got some really good stories. um, so,
Okay.
well, no, I mean, the joke was, honestly, the joke was, nothing surprises us anymore, right? I mean, if somebody came over and said, "Hey, I want to slice up frozen dog turds," and and we'd go, "Okay, what size?" And it wouldn't even phase us anymore, right? And because of all the weird requests we got, right? And as an example, we designed a device to track the feeding patterns of cockroaches. And so, once again, Clorox had a division that dealt with insecticides and stuff like that. So they had these cockroaches, and they were like, "Well, what motivates cockroaches, right? It's mainly food, right? So what are their? How often do they go to the bait? How often do they go to eat when they're near food? And how do they interact with one another, right? And this is, long before real smart vision systems and things like that. So we were there gluing little RFID tags on the backs of cockroaches, and we built a scanner that kind of watched these. So it was like watching these little numbers swim around, right? But each one of those was a cockroach, right? And you could correlate
Oh my
that to,
goodness.
yeah, you could correlate that to their feeding patterns, right? So and so that was just one request, right? And um, and so I don't know, geez, I don't know how much we charged for that. It was thousands and thousands of dollars worth of research, right? and prototyping and things like that. So yeah, it was cool. For I don't know 20 years, I got to do stuff that a lot of people would never even think of. So or get to get to the opportunity to work on, right? And so we weren't really a widget factory. We were designing and building really kind of highly complex custom equipment. It was pretty exciting, and got to do a lot of cool stuff. And a lot of people say, "Oh, Tom's a manual machinist, right?" Well, that's kind of what I prefer to do in my free time is manual machine. But that shop, we had CNCs, we had Matsuras and Akuma lathes, and then manual equipment as well. And when the shop wasn't busy with R&D work, the stuff from the engineers and designers, right? We were doing job shop work, pure job shop work, and no, we didn't do any production. So production, for us would be 50 pieces or something like that, and so we weren't really a production shop, and but we did job shop work, and so the guys working there were very skilled because of the varied nature of the work and the different types of materials that we ran across. One day it might be some aluminum parts, and then the next day it might be tantalum parts, right? We did a lot of work for Lawrence Livermore Labs, for the metallurgy group, and a lot of that was refractory metals and things like that, pretty complicated geometry, crucibles and things made out of refractory materials. So and we got good at it, and so we did that to kind of fill in the shop work when we weren't actually building a machine or some devices or whatever. So anyway, yeah, I do CNC work, and I have a CNC, although I don't. Um, um, well, that's a whole nother story. I
So
and
that actually gets into one of our
Yeah,
listener questions.
sure.
Let me
Which
try
one
to
is that
find
there?
it. Somebody had asked.
Oh, what's the
Somebody,
story and plan
Hermit
for
Shed
the?
had asked.
Yeah.
Yeah, for your Makino.
So here's a story on the Makino. Okay, so I'll go ahead and tell that story. So I bought this Makino from Lawrence Livermore Lab, and they have a used equipment sale that I kind of monitor, and we have a couple of those. It's a KE55 Makino, and it's considered a tool room mill, and so it doesn't have a tool changer, and you can actually, if you want, you can switch it over and use the hand. It has hand wheels on the front of it, and you can kind of use it like a manual mill. Although that's not why I wanted it. Well, we have a couple of these at work and at Berkeley Lab, and they use the hell out of those things because they're super quick to set up. It's got a nice little work envelope. You can pop the sides off of it, and you can put long things in it. And if you got one or two tools, it's like super easy to set up and get going on. And you can run flood coolant on it, the whole 9 yards, and all that. And it's 6,000 RPM spindle only. Rigid taps. It does all the nice stuff. It'll thread mill. All those things. Um, and so anyway, I've been lusting after one of those for a while, right? Well, one finally came up, and I got it for a pretty good price. And the so unfortunately, they had left it outside, and you kind of couldn't tell. And it's not like you get to run them before you before you buy them. So I went and looked at it and crawled over it and checked it out, and it looked pretty good, right? And I opened the cabinets. There was no water in the cabinets or anything like that. And so I bought the thing, and I get it home, and it turns out that the spindle's kind of seized up, right? And what had happened
No.
was, yeah, yeah, right, right. And what had happened was there's a little there's a button on the front that locks the spindle, and another button that releases the tool, to change tools. and this cable comes through a little hole in the casting, goes down. Well, what had happened was it got rained on, and water kind of trickled down this cable and filled up behind this little switch plate. And they had replaced the spindle bearing sometime in the past, and there's a little access panel right behind that, and they didn't reseal it properly. And so water got through that and onto the bearings, which are right there. So this it's not a cartridge spindle like you guys are probably used to seeing. This is the spindle bearings are in the actual the head casting itself in that housing, so it doesn't have a separate cartridge. And so anyway, the bearings are trashed. So I said, "Oh, okay, cool. Well, hey, this will be good. I'll just replace the bearings, right?" So I bought some bearings and got all set up to do it. And by the way, this is before Robin's awesome video on spindle bearings, right? And so I got all set up to do it. I did the thing and put it all back together. Everything's happy, right? I put it all back together, and I start to run it and kind of break the bearings in, right? So you run it real slow and watch the temperature and make sure nothing bad's going on, right? So far so good. So I start ratcheting the speed up and all that, and then they start to make a little bit of noise, right? And I'm like, yeah, what the heck's going on here, right? And so I back off again, and I start the cycle again, and I go, and it's making noise, and they're getting hot, and I'm like, dang, what the heck's going on here, right? And so I try, a couple more times, and I can't get past a certain point, right? Anyway, so Robin and I talk pretty regularly, right? And he asked the same question. He goes, "Oh, hey, how's the Makino doing?" And I said, "Yeah, I got this problem." And I told him. He goes, "Okay, well, walk me through what you did." And he goes, "Okay, that's good. Okay, that's good. Okay, yeah, so far so good. Oh, did you do this?" I go, "Yeah, I did that." Da 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 da. And then I got to the point where when I was inserting this bearing assembly into the housing, right, I couldn't just push it in with my hand, right? And so what I did was I kind of used the machine, and I just put a block of wood down, and I pushed on the spindle nose where the tool would sit, right, where the keys are, right, where the keys into the Cat 40 holder, right, and I just kind of pushed against that
Right.
and slipped them into the housing, right. And my logic was, oh well, it's no worse than drilling with a big drill, right, and pecking with a big drill or something like that. And so I was telling Robin this, and he goes, and here's how he did it, right? Oh, he goes, that's an illegal operation. And and I went, what? And and he goes, yeah. He goes, think about it. Think about how those bearings are supported when they're in the housing. Da, da, da. And then I was thinking, I didn't quite get it at first, right? And he's talking to me, and I'm like, God. And then it's clicked, and I realized what I did. So they're supported in a different way when they're in the housing. So what I should have done was I should have pushed them in by pushing against the outer race only, and while it was outside the machine, and it's pretty subtle, okay. And he's like, oh yeah, and I'm like, oh, thanks a lot, right. And so anyway, I was pretty bummed because it's $2,000 worth of bearings, right. And so I'm like, God dang it, right. And so the machine runs, it's there, and I just haven't felt like spending another $2,000 right this minute, and that's my punishment, is I don't get to use the machine and until until I'm ready, I guess. So anyway, it's kind of a bummer. So
Oh,
that's
gee.
the Makino story, but it runs fine. It's a Fanuc control. It's basically an 18 Fanuc 18, and no, it's a pretty sweet machine. Um, and I'm anxious to use it. I got all the communications going, and I can drip feed it if I want, and send programs from the laptop, and all that stuff works fine. And it's a nice compact footprint for a small shop. And if you want to just run over there and slap something in the vise and use the hand wheel to face an end or something like that, or yeah, you can do it. You can do that too. So you can kind of use it like a manual machine. and with positioning down to a tenth, right? 10 thousandths of an inch. So, or 1 micron if you kick it over into metric mode. So it's kind of jig bore type stuff if I need to use it for that. So I'll buy some more bearings and then I'll do it again, and I'll watch Robin's video that came out a couple months after that. So I'll watch his video again very closely, and I'll try again when I feel like spending another $2,000. So, but right now I got other things I'm doing. So that's the Makino story. And
So one of our listeners,
yeah,
GPM Race Engines, asked, is there a reason you've stayed at a CNC at least on your channel? And so does that mean that once you get this thing up and running, we'll see it make an appearance on OxTools? Or
oh sure, yeah. Well, once it's going, and it's honestly it's not part of my workflow right now, so I kind of don't think about it very much. And I mean, there were some parts on that egress project that would have been really nice to do on there, and but kind of on the flip side, doing all that stuff manually was, I don't know, I guess tipping my hat a little bit to the guys that actually built the first ones that probably didn't have access to CNC equipment. And so I don't know, I'm kind of nostalgic that way a little bit, I guess. But yeah, I I will show it on there. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I honestly I get bored watching CNCs cut circles and stuff like that. To me, the value of the CNC is I can go do something else. Okay, and while that's working for me over there, and I mean, so many. Uh, we have CNCs at work, right? And I see these wonderful machinists, right? And they stand there and they watch the machine work, and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Go program the next op, you dipstick, and or go cut the next piece of material or something instead of standing there with your thumb up your what and watching the thing make chips, right? I mean, come on, right? I mean, you've just thrown away one of the major advantages of the equipment, right? And if you're on your game, I don't know how many machines you guys have in your shop, but my personal record is running 9 machines at once. Okay, and that includes saws and other things, right? And let me tell you, you're scooting around feeding these machines, right? When you get the cycle time dialed in just right, and you can run a bunch of machines at once, and that's the power, in particular for small shops, right? Is you can go do something else. You can go do that next quote or order that material, or I don't know. There's a zillion things that you got to do, right? Make that phone call and buy that new pulse generator you're going to buy, right? So I listened to one of your
yeah, I think
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's Payton was just talking about that today. He did a Instagram live video and was saying, I prefer to clean while the CNC's making parts because it's
Yeah,
working.
exactly. Sweep the floor, right? And it drives me nuts, right? But they're not my guys, right? And so I don't get to tell them what to do. So, but I don't know. It's it is kind of mesmerizing to watch them work, right? I get it, and especially when they're doing something pretty cool. If you're just cutting profiles and stuff like that, it's pretty boring. But some of the things that we're doing at work are pretty interesting. So it's kind of fun to watch the machines, right? So anyway, so that's my story on CNC. So yeah, you'll see it once I kind of decide to cough up the money and redo it, and it'll be part of my workflow. But it's not like I'm going to put the camera on and let you watch it for hours, whittling away, right? It'll be something in context to the project, right? So my channel's kind of about the project and the work, right? And that's, I don't know how I like to think about that stuff. So I don't know what's
So
next.
Tom, going back to working and whatnot, you work at Berkeley. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what you do there, how you got to
Yeah,
the
sure.
position you're in and all that stuff.
Uh-huh. So I was telling you about the company that I ran for 20 years, and that was a little company down in Pleasanton, and they're still there. Um, and an engineer and myself, we were going to buy the company from the owner. That was the kind of the major plan, and we couldn't agree on price, which is actually pretty common in that kind of a scenario. So functionally, we were buying ourselves, paying for ourselves, and it didn't make any sense, the price that he wanted, right? And so after that, when that kind of fell apart and we said, hey, listen, we can't afford to buy your company, sorry. And so, the climate changed a little bit. And let's see, how old was I then? That's a 46, or I was 46 years old, something like that. And I said, well, I'm still marketable. I'm not too freaking old to get another job or start up another career or whatever. If I'm going to do something, I should do something soon. And so I'm like, all right, okay, whatever. So I started kind of sniffing around, right? For 20 years, I hadn't looked at a any job postings or anything like that, um, at all. And so I started looking, and shortly after, I saw something. It was let's see, what was it? It was a technical supervisor at Berkeley Lab, and a guy I know. Actually, he was the general manager of one of our vendors. He had left that company and gone to work there. So I knew this, and so I called him up and I said, "Hey, what's the story, right? I see this listing here." And he goes, "Oh, hey, you looking at it or what?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm kind of checking it out." And there's a lot of stuff that I can do on this, but there's a lot of stuff I don't even know what it is, right? And he goes, "Okay, well, let me figure out whose it is, and I'll get back to you, right?" So he calls me back a day later or something like that, and he had talked to the guy that had put the posting up, and he says, "Well, you want to meet him, kind of, low key, see if you guys think it's a good match." And I said, "Yeah, sure." So anyway, I went out there and met this guy, and I don't know, we kind of hit it off, right? We talked about a lot of things. He showed me around, um, and I said, "Okay, well," I go, "This is all very interesting. I see a lot of things that I can help out with here, and that I can take take a hold of." And I said, "But there's a lot of things that I'm not familiar with." And I said, "Do you think I should apply?" Basically, is what I said. He says, "Oh, absolutely." So anyway, I got the job, and it was a technical supervisor, and it was um, the beginning of a large installation project of a big linear accelerator. So this was right when Obama got in office, and he released a bunch of what the heck was it? It was there was some funding struggle. Was it ARA fund? Not ARA. You know what? I can't even remember now. Anyway, he released a lot of funds to build scientific infrastructure projects and things like that. So we got some of this. We got some of this money. It was, I don't know, $12 million or something like that. And so what we did, my task was to take a Reagan era, 1980s era Star Wars project from Livermore, disassemble it, reconfigure it, change its polarity, and rebuild it and reinstall it at Berkeley. And so I did, and I learned a hell of a lot in the process. And yeah, no kidding. And yeah, the learning curve was, I would say, extremely steep. So functionally, what I was doing was leading a group of mechanical technicians and organizing the construction of this accelerator. And it was successful. It's still running to this day. Um, and but what I do now is I run the technical group that deals with all the mechanical technicians and all the scientific programs at Berkeley Lab. So, and so these mechanical technicians, some of them machine, some of them do vacuum systems, some of them specialize in optics and alignment systems, things like that. And it's just the work's pretty varied. So if you've seen, I know you guys seen Saunders' video on the tour that I gave him there, and have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
and if listeners out there that haven't seen John Saunders' video, I gave him a tour and showed him some different areas there at the lab. I don't shoot any YouTube video at the lab. I make a couple of bucks off YouTube, and it would be kind of a conflict of interest for me I mean, it's ripe for video, let me tell you, but I'm just avoiding that whole thing. I don't want somebody to say, "Oh, hey, he's making money off the place that he's a government installation or whatever," and I just don't want that kind of press. Let's put it that way. So I can give tours though. So if you guys came out, I could give you a tour and you could film, you could do whatever you want with the video, that kind of stuff. But I'm not going to do anything with the video. So other than maybe be in it or whatever. So, but that kind of gives you an idea of some of the areas that I'm working in: superconducting magnets, accelerators. I remove disused equipment and reconfigure it for new experimental stuff, and then I take care of a whole bunch of mechanical technicians, and it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting overall. So yeah, I've been there. I don't
Yeah,
know,
that sounds great.
11 years now, something like that, and yeah, it's I like to joke that I'm a tick that I buried my head in there, and they're gonna have to pry me out. So and to get rid of me, right? So or put a cigarette on my neck or something to get me to pull out. So yeah,
Oh, that's great.
yeah.
So
So it's
speaking of where you shoot your videos, you shoot your videos at home.
correct. Yeah.
Somebody was asking, you it seems like you kind of have a whole bunch of industrial space and some living arrangement. I think it was NYDLS 30 who asked, how,
Yeah.
like,
Okay.
if you could explain a little bit about your living arrangement there.
Yeah. Sure. So where I live is it's basically an artist community, and it's in a bunch of old kind of between World War I and World War II warehouses, and it's part of um, it was part of a military installation out here in Benicia, and so these are concrete warehouses, and the family that owns these buildings were kind of patrons of the arts, and they supported artists and people that build things and stuff like that. So they didn't really want kind of commercial usage of it. So it was for people that were creating art and stuff like that. My wife's an artist, and she knows a lot of the people out here, and we were living in a city a few cities away, and honestly, when I started working at Berkeley Lab, I didn't have access to a shop anymore, right? So I left there where I could do anything I wanted at any time of the day or night, my own private, excellent shop, right? To having zero shop, and so it's kind of, and I'm not allowed to do G jobs at work, right? That's a no fly zone, right? So um, I built a shed in the back, and I made a stab at trying to have my own home shop, right? There where we were living, and it was pretty unsatisfying. And then I looked at construction costs there for a proper shop, or multi-car garage, basically, because it was a residential area, and it's $250,000, right, or something like that, and it just didn't make any sense to do that, right, and to put that kind of money into it, and then what, right? what are you going to put in there? Nothing, right? Because you're out of money, right? And so yeah, it was no. Honestly, it was an emotional problem for me, right? And I don't know. We kind of talked about it and said, "Geez, our hobbies, her artwork and my shop work are really our passions, right? One of our passions, and we really need a shop space, right? Um, so we got rid of the house. We said we don't want to be homeowners. Who wants to clean the frickin' gutters all the time, right? And every time a stinking tree falls over, it's $5,000, right? And to get it hauled off and dealt with, right? What the hell are we doing here, right? I, that's a lathe, right? That's a lathe or a mill every time a tree falls over, right? And so and you're paying a mill and a lathe and mortgage every month, right? And so what the heck are we doing? So we lucked out, and this place kind of came up, and we said, hey, do we want to do this? And we decided that we did. And so we kind of got rid of the house, and we lease it's basically an industrial space, but it has an apartment up above it. So it has a living space up above it. And that's where I'm sitting right now. And I can look out the window down into the shop, and I got 3-phase power here, and basically all the amenities. Now it's not what I would call for everybody. All right. It's, noise and dust from the shop does get into the living space a little bit. Right. And, so, you know, it helps that, if your spouse or your partner is into the same things as you are, right? Like working in the shop and working on projects and stuff like that. So I couldn't do it without her, being on board for that kind of stuff. But I'll tell you, I can walk down in my underwear and go run a mill if I want to, right? Can you guys do that in your shop, right? So, not that I do that, but I could if I wanted to, right? And when I've forgotten something, sometimes I have gone down there to get it, right, and bring it upstairs. But it's pretty conducive to getting things done if you live inside your shop, right? And you got to be dedicated, I would say, but it's pretty cool. So that's part of my secret, how I can work a full-time job and kind of do videos and stuff like that, is because if this place was 2 miles away, that would be an impediment to doing anything, to going over there when you're not in the mood and whatnot. And now, I eat dinner and I have to walk through the shop to go to my office, right? And it's like all it takes is me looking over in the shop. Oh, I'm gonna go look at that thing, and then pretty soon I'm in there working, right? And pretty powerful stuff. So anyway, that's the story on my living arrangement there. So yeah,
That's pretty great.
Yeah, let's see what else we got here.
So one of my questions that I put
Yeah.
on there was, you've been around in machining for a long time. What skills do you see that are being lost in the trade, and like, what do you think are the most important ones that we need to fight to retain?
That's actually a pretty good question. I don't know. You can't stay static. Okay, so you know it's pretty hard to stay a manual machinist these days, right? So people that are unwilling to change and embrace new technology are the ones that are in trouble. And so my story to that is a long time ago, before there was widespread, electric refrigeration, like your refrigerator, right? What people used to do was they had ice boxes, right? And these ice cutters, and I call them Wisconsin ice cutters because that was an area where there was a lot of them. In the middle of winter, they'd go out on these lakes, and they had all this specialized equipment, and they would go out there and they would cut these giant blocks of ice, right? and they'd haul them up on wagons, and they drag the with horses and drag these blocks of ice, and they would put them in insulated barns or caves or wherever the heck they put them or whatever, right? And then during the year they would chop this ice up, and they had they would go around to the houses, and you would buy ice to put in your ice box to keep your food cold, right? Well, these guys, they're kind of invested in their industry, right? And they things started to change, right? Where electricity was being plumbed into houses, and people could buy an electric refrigerator, right? And these guys kind of poo-pooed it and said, "Oh yeah, well that's a bunch of baloney. You know, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing, right?" And here's these guys that were totally positioned to take over that new market, right? And perhaps didn't embrace it like they should have. And when's the last time you saw a Wisconsin ice cutter? You haven't, right? Because they're dead. And now some of them, I'm
Right.
sure, got into commercial refrigeration and stuff like that. That's kind of a generalization, but it's kind of illustrative in that in this industry, our industry, this machining and metalworking, you really need to be looking at trends and constantly educating yourself and changing and adapting to your markets, right? And the people that kind of stay static and don't change find themselves getting the rug pulled out from under them, and then crying uncle and what the hell happened, right? Well, you weren't paying attention. You need to, so not every new thing should be embraced. A lot of these things are flashes and they just disappear, but computer controlled equipment is pretty entrenched now, and it's here to stay. So if you're not learning it and getting on the horse, you're in trouble. And not that you can't make a living doing it the other way, certainly not, but it certainly limits your options. Now, what skills? I don't know. I don't know when the change was. Maybe in the late 80s or something like that, or in the early 80s, where the focus in education was to higher education, as opposed to what you and I would call blue collar education, right? So there was kind of this fundamental shift away from that. Well, we don't want our children to be, dirty hands people, right? And we want them to be stockbrokers and bankers and computer programmers and those kinds of things. They can sit at desks and do all this stuff. So the focus of education has let us down, right? Because they focused on that at the expense of the other, right? And it, and people ask me about that, and I draw a little graph on the board, right? And you got two kids coming out of high school, right? So that's the starting point. And you got Johnny and you got Billy, right? So Johnny's he's gonna go to college and get an engineering degree, right? And the other guy he's gonna become an apprentice machinist. And what's going on down there? Hey, dog's yapping. Sorry. Anyway, so he's going to be an apprentice machinist, right? So he starts working. The apprentice machinist starts working, and right away he's getting paid, right? He's not making very much, but he's getting paid, right? And the other guy's going to school, and guess what? He's going in the hole, right? Right out of the gates. He's paying for school, and he's not working. So he's at a negative amortization, right? He's going down, right? So now you follow this graph for a few years, right? And so 4 or 5 years later, the one guy maybe got his engineering degree, right? And but the apprentice guy, he's now a journeyman, and his wages are still ramping up. In fact, the curve tilts up more, right? And so our new engineer guy gets his first job, and they don't make 100 grand on their first job. They get some shitty job, right, as a junior engineer. So now he's basically starting to pay back where he is in the hole, right? Now you can project out, and every scenario is a little bit differently, but the engineer's got a lot of catching up to do before he equals, and ultimately he will probably pass the other guy at some point, but it's going to be a while. You're talking 20 years out or something like that. And so I tell people, I go, not everybody's cut out to sit at a computer or have a desk job, right? A lot of people really enjoy working with their hands. They want to be outside. They want to touch things and work with things and interact with things. And that is a valid career. And it is paid me back so many times, that trade, right? And not to knock engineering or that path or anything like that, but if so, all I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong with what we're doing, and it should be supported in the schools in kind of an equal footing. And in Europe, they have a different program, right? So they keep an eye on these kids, and they get to some point, and they look at these young people, and they see what their gifts are, and they say, oh yeah, this guy, he's really good with hands-on stuff. We're going to send him to this technical vocational school. And this guy, he's really good at the academics. You know what? He's going to go to scientist school, right? And so there's a point where they kind of separate a little bit, and they do a much better job there than we do here in the U.S. So I think our education system has failed us a little bit here, and that they don't support the blue collar trades, and we've suffered as a country because of it. I think a little bit, and that we've lost some of our manufacturing punch, and although we still got lots of smart people and innovators, and you know inventing new things, but still a great place, but we could do a lot better. So, did that answer your question? I don't know if I did or not. So, um, anyway, that's
Yeah.
Tom's 2 cents worth on that. I don't know.
So I got one other question about
Yeah.
skills, and this was
Uh-huh.
from DM Ron 101. He said, "What skills are the most valuable when working as a machinist as part of a team? And since you lead a team, what do you see that it makes these people the most successful in a team?"
Um. So, let's see. Most valuable skill. So, communication is always a good one, right? But it's kind of a, I don't know, it's too broad of a stroke, right? And so I guess part of what I think of value is being able to put yourself in the other guy's shoes and try to understand what they're trying to communicate, right? And I guess it's empathy. I would be the quality. Trying to put yourself in their shoes and understand what it is they want. And when you have that empathy for your teammates and whatnot, and then that usually makes a really good team. And I work with actually many teams there, and a lot of the teams are very, very, very mixed culturally, right? And different cultures have different values and different kind of methods and things like that. That um, sometimes, I don't know, go against our experience a little bit. How they handle things, and that ability to kind of put yourself in their shoes, and they're trying to get their idea across and whatnot, and work to understand them. Really makes for a good kind of team experience, right? So, kind of communication and empathy makes for a good team, and looking out for each other, right? You know, my job there is the eternal vigilance for the other guy, right? I'm watching out for all my teammates, right? Hey, watch out! You're gonna step on a nail there. Hold still for a second, and everybody's looking out for everybody else, right? So that kind of empathy, and looking out for the other guy kind of attitude, I think is the most valuable, one of the valuable skills. When people don't give a crap, that's the worst, right? And you know, who's the guy that took the last paper towel, right, and didn't put a new roll on there, right? Okay, well, everybody understands you're in a hurry or whatever, and maybe it happens once in a while, but if it's the same turkey every time, right? It's like, come on. So and sometimes it's me, right? I'm in a hurry, and I got to go, and I don't have time to put it in there, but and maybe one of my teammates sees and says, oh man, he's in a hurry, I'll go ahead and take care of it for him, right? And understanding that with the other guys. So I don't know.
Totally. Yeah.
Another question, Tom, we have from Adam the Machinist is, could Tom tell us about the best boss he's ever had and the qualities of that person?
The best boss. Who is the best boss I ever had? So the best boss I've ever had is probably my first boss when I came to Berkeley Lab, and he's still there, and I work with him off and on different projects, and so the quality. So he made me a better person because he demanded more from me. Okay, and it wasn't just demanding and banging his fist on the table, right? But he basically set high expectations, right? And these were expectations that he was pretty sure that I could meet too, right? And he supported me and coached me how to get there when I stumbled, right? So and so yeah, those are good qualities. So your bosses, they expect a lot from you, but then they show you how to get there too, right? And so they help you get there. So they're not just, you're not on your own. You're not lone wolf McQuaid, right? They're there to help you, and they're open to you asking for help in particular cases, right? And some of these old bosses that I had, right? Um, we used to joke, right? They come up and look at something that you were working on, right? So say you were machining a part or something, and somebody that you had a lot of respect for, let's say Robin Renzetti walks up, okay? We'll set the stage here. So you're working on a part in your shop, and Robin Renzetti walks up, and he picks up one of your parts and rubs his hand over it, and then he goes, and then he sets the part down. Now he just crushed you, right? I mean, he just literally crushed you, right? And so, but and then he walks off, and immediately you pick that part up, and you go, "What the hell was he looking at?" Right? And you go, "Oh yeah, look at that blend there. Yeah, shit, I could have done better on that. Damn it!" And so he makes you want to be a better person, right? And it wasn't overt or right, like, God, this thing sucks, right? It wasn't like that, right? It was just, you want to be a better person, right? So when you play with people that are better than you, it makes you a better person, right? And so that's kind of what I'm talking about, right? Is he's a lot better than I will ever be, and so when he expected more, he had that tiny little bit of disappointment in his voice or whatever. You just knew you had to do better there, right? And it made you try harder, right? So that's some of the values or the qualities that make him a good boss. This guy that I had, and he's not my boss anymore. So now I tease him all the time. So it's pretty good. But, yeah. Yeah.
So another question we had was from Raven Rock Machining, and he said, "What's the biggest oops or mess up you've encountered yourself or witnessed?"
Oh, let's see. Biggest oops. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. There's certainly a lot of screw ups that you witness over the years. But I'll tell you one of mine, just because I don't want to poke at anybody, right? And but I'll tell you one of mine. So when I was a sheet metal apprentice, the the foreman gave me a job, and it was cutting up a whole bunch of 11 gauge stainless steel sheet, right? So these are big sheets, they're 4x8 sheets or 4x10 sheets, and I had to cut a whole bunch of pieces. Um, of a particular, these were big squares for something, and so I was cutting the stuff up, and I realized that when I was hooking my tape a couple of times, the tape measure hooked on the shear blade. It hooked on the instead of hooking on the proper hook, it hooked on the I don't know, the little bracket part that attaches it to the blade, right? And because I was checking the pieces that I cut, right, and I was like, God dang it, look at this! Some of these are off. They're off by like almost 3/4 of an inch. Shit, how did I do that, right? And I'm like, and I was pretty new at the time, right? I'm like, oh God, that you get that your stomach kind of does this flip, right? And it's just painful almost, right? And you make that long walk to the foreman's thing, right? Like, oh God, I gotta go tell him. So I walk over there, right, and I go, hey, and he's like, what? And I go, I made a little mistake on that job, and he goes, and these were his words: "There are no small mistakes on 11 gauge stainless, Tom." And I go, fuck, oh God. And so, I almost threw up, right, at that point. And he goes, okay, well, let's go look at it, right? And I go over and look at it. We go over and look, and he says, okay, well, it's going to be okay. And I go, well, why? These are like, they're way the hell off. He goes, no, where these go next is we cut circles out of them. And I didn't know that at the time. And we cut circles out of them, so they're actually way oversized. And anyway, so they were able to get the circles they needed out of them, right? And it was fine. They were just basically kind of rough cuts, but I didn't know, right? And so I was so relieved, right? And each one of these sheets is hundreds of dollars, right? And I don't know how many I messed up. Ultimately it wasn't that big of a deal, right? But even if they were scrapped, it's not the end of the world. They probably wouldn't have gotten fired or anything like that. But at the time, it felt really, really bad. I can still recall that feeling to this day, right? The dread of that long walk to the foreman's office, right? So, yeah. So that was
Oh yeah,
mine.
definitely.
And now we actually, you know what? I just thought of a pretty bad oops that happened at Berkeley. And this is quite a few years ago now, but we have these superconducting magnet coils, right? And so basically, these are long coils of superconducting wire that are wound and then impregnated in epoxy. And in the epoxy, there's instrumentation, there's heater tapes, there's all kinds of stuff that's inside the epoxy, right? And so these things take months to build, right? And they're reacted in a furnace, and they they go through a heat treatment process, so they're very fragile. And we had a bunch of coils that were stacked up in a different building, and they wanted to um, there was a coil that was bad that didn't pass testing, and I don't remember what the number on the coil was. So there was a bad coil, but the leads on the coil, it has leads that go into the coil. They were still good. So, and these were from a particular lot of wire. So they wanted to use these leads to extend the leads on another magnet, right? So they sent, and thank God I didn't give the orders here in this case, right? They told the technician, they said, okay, go cut the leads off coil X, and then we're going to put those on this other coil that we're building right now, right? Or something to that effect. So he goes up there, and he gets confused, and he cuts the leads off the wrong coil. and he cuts them off of a good
Oh
coil.
my God.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, to put it in perspective, these coils at this point in their life, after all the work that's gone in them, they're about $500,000 each. And so,
Oh.
right. So that's a bad one, right?
That's a
And
lot of lathes.
that's a lot of lathes. That's right. That's a lot of lathes. Right? Yeah, that's a couple of UMC 750s, right? So so anyway, this guy felt terrible, right? And um, and I have to say that the overall reaction was, oh shit, right? But nobody picked on him too hard because it's one of those mistakes where, the guy, if you leaned on him too hard, he could go out back and blow his brains out or something like that, right? And if he, some people take it really hard, right? Well, anyway, he felt really bad, and so we figured out, what the confusion was and why he got confused about it or whatever. The upside of it was now we had to actually repair that coil. And we had never done that before at that point, right? Nobody had ever chopped the leads off of a coil, right? And so we actually figured out how to splice new leads on there, and it actually worked great. So the outcome was a win, right? Because now, if the leads were damaged or even during testing they can get damaged or we needed to extend them, we now had a way to do it, that we could do it, and that we hadn't worked out before. So we actually learned something from it. Now that didn't help him. He still felt bad about it, and yeah, probably lost some sleep over it. But ultimately, it was a win. But I wouldn't have want to been in his shoes, I'll tell you. So that would have been pretty bad.
Jeez.
So that was a pretty bad oops. Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
Much bigger than my stainless
Yeah,
steel.
that's
So,
rough.
yeah.
So from Tangent Darts, we got a question. What's your
Yeah.
thought process on how you choose projects for becoming a YouTube video?
That's actually a pretty good question too. So, honestly, there probably isn't that much thought in it from my perspective. What you guys see is me working in my shop, and I happen to turn the camera on, right? And now, I will tell you guys and the world out there that I do a lot of work that I don't film, because sometimes I just want to go out in the shop and turn the radio on and do a bunch of work, right? Because for me, my enjoyment in this is doing the work. Now, filming is extra overhead to that work, right? And so I don't always turn the camera on. And, you know, I rebuilt a Lapmaster 15 lapping machine here recently, and I didn't film a lick of it, right? I just felt like doing the work and kind of getting into it and rocking out with my tunes and being in the shop and doing that. And that was probably, I don't know, 60 hours of work or something like that I didn't film them 1 minute of it, right? And I'm also I am working on some projects in the background that I'm not ready to share with the world yet, because I want to complete them first, and there's other people involved too, so they're kind of loose collaborations. So we have to get to a certain point before we can start kind of releasing the video. So I guess I'd say it's not, my thought process is these are interesting things to share with the metalworking community, right? And these old guys, these dead old guys that I told you about, what they instilled in me was part of my responsibility as a journeyman or an old fart, card carrying old fart myself, right? Is to share this knowledge, right? Because I'm standing on their shoulders, and they're standing on the shoulders of the guys that they learned from, right? So we kind of owe it to the trade, because all we're doing is we're renting this knowledge for a while, right? So the more people that we can share this with and train and entertain or teach it's a win. And now we have these wonderful platforms for teaching, right? And literally, I have, I don't know, apprentices, I guess you could call them, all over the world. And I'll tell you a real quick story. There is a guy from I can't remember what city in Russia. He contacts me and says, "Oh," he goes, "Oh, hey Tom," he goes, "Thank you so much for your videos, blah blah blah. I love this. I've learned so much, and I got my first job as a machinist." And just recently, he says, I was a computer programmer and I hated it and I didn't want to be in the office. And I started watching machining videos, and I bought a couple pieces of equipment and I watched your channel, blah, blah, blah. And so I learned, and he says, I went and applied for a job, and here's how he put it. He goes, I've kind of stretched the truth a little bit about my experience. Right. And, and he says, but I got the job. And he goes, that was 4 weeks ago. I'm still there. Right. And I'm like, oh, right on, man. Cool. And this is great. And he goes, yeah. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. And, he says, oh, I want to buy one of your books and blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay, I'll tell you what, that was such a great story. I said, I'm going to send you a book, and I'm going to, I'll sign it for you and I'll send it to you in Russia. And I said, my only request is that you take a picture of you holding the book in front of some communist iconic structure and send me the picture. Right. And so he did, right? And it was some weird bridge, the Joseph P. Stalin bridge, or whatever the hell it was, right? And actually, it was the middle of winter when he sent the picture, so it's like totally iced over, right? And it's like, okay, all right, you fulfilled your requirements, but it's not a great picture. But anyway, if he's listening, so I still enjoyed it, and as far as I know, he's still working at that place, and so it kind of touched me a little bit that, this YouTube stuff and all this stuff that we do kind of in this social community of machinists or whatever is actually people are learning things for real. And it's empowering people to start their own businesses or get into this trade and find out that, wow, this is really awesome. I love working with my hands and my brain and my heart. Right. And this is so cool. Right. And it's kind of humbling, right, that you're touching that many people all over the world, right? And it's pretty cool. So that's my cool virtual apprentice story, right? And there's more than one of them out there. There's a bunch of them that have discovered the love of this kind of work, right? Kind of neat. So,
how cool!
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Tom, I'm just curious, what
Yeah.
made you start doing YouTube videos?
Yeah, I think the first thing that got me going on that is I watched a Keith Fenner video, right? And I watched this guy, and what he was doing, he was pouring some Babbitt. He was doing a Babbitt bearing, right? And this is kind of one of these weird lost arts, right? That you still see in the marine industry, and in some industries they still use Babbitt and stuff like that because it's convenient, right? And I looked at it and I go, God dang it! I go, this is awesome, right? I go, here this guy actually shot a video of this thing that you can kind of read about in an obscure book, but now I watched him, right, and I really got a good sense of how that works now, right? And I go, God, this is a really powerful format, right? And so that kind of stuck in my head. And then I was talking to somebody at work, and it was a recruiter, one of our recruiters at work, and I said, we got to use this video format to actually as kind of a recruitment tool, to attract talent to the laboratory, right? And maybe we videotape some technicians doing some work, and we say, hey, are you interested in this kind of work? Hey, why don't you apply for this job? Blah blah blah, right? So use it kind of as a recruitment tool. And they said, oh wow, that's a great idea. Why don't you go do it, right? And I was like, oh, okay. So I said, I go, well, you know what? Maybe I ought to just try this thing myself for a bit. Okay. Let me just, because I hated the sound of my voice and I wasn't, if you look at some of my really early videos, not that the later ones are any a lot better, but the early ones are pretty bad. Right. And so there's some practice involved with filming and video editing and stuff like that. Right. So I said, you know what? I don't want to look like a total dork. Right. So let me just try this off on my own, right? Well, I had been writing a blog. I don't know if you guys know that I had a blog. I still have a blog, but I haven't written anything in it in a long time. I was writing a blog at the time, kind of industrial, interest articles, things like that, and it attracted a decent following, right? Well, I started putting videos out there, and pretty much immediately they got like 1,000 times more traction than the blog articles did, right? And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
maybe I'm onto something here, right? And so I kind of left the blog and kind of went off into the video thing. And actually, I don't know how long ago that is now, at least 5 years now. So, and have kind of, built up my little brand here, and got a following. And, it's pretty cool. And the whole YouTube thing's kind of opened some doors. I've met some really awesome people and gotten some pretty cool opportunities to collaborate with folks and be part of other projects and tour shops. I mean, it's opened a lot of doors, and it's pretty powerful. And hey, I met you guys, right? I mean, right? Here's a connection that
Yeah,
came
Yeah,
seriously.
came through all of
exactly.
that, right? And so, and I have to say that this metalwork or machining or metalworking community that's on YouTube is pretty mellow for the most part, right? I don't know what else you guys watch on YouTube, but some subject matter is pretty polarized. I'll use the firearms forums or firearms channels as kind of a touch point there, right? These are pretty polarized areas, right? There's some pretty serious hate and flaming and all that stuff going on. The machinists and metal workers, they're pretty damn mellow in comparison. So I have to say that the viewership, of course, there's some jerks out there, right? But for the most part, good solid 90% are just solid people and genuinely good folks, right? So pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about that a few times on the podcast, how the
Mm-hmm.
Instant Machinist community and YouTube community is great.
Yeah. So yeah, just heads up for anybody that's listening. I'm planning on being part of that at IMTS, right? I think there's a big Insta Machinist following that goes to IMTS, and that's in September this year. So I'm planning on going to that, and it should be pretty epic because I think people are coming in from all over the world to go to that, and a lot of the machine tool manufacturers are kind of getting on the bandwagon. They're realizing that there's actually some value to participating in some of that, and being a part of that. I mean, Kern's a good example, right? What other Swiss machine tool company is going to let YouTubers slap their stickers on their machines at a show, right? I mean, it's pretty nutty, right? And
Exactly.
it's like, really? Are you kidding? Hell yeah, I'm going to send a sticker to have it slapped on the side of that. Yeah, and it's like, are you kidding? That's a I don't know, $600,000 machine or whatever it is, right? And they're going to let us stick stickers on it at a show where they're trying to sell these things. That's pretty nutty, right? And but it's also pretty cool. And so yeah, I mean, I think they're starting to pay attention a little bit, or they have been, and it's kind of neat. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So we've got two more serious questions and then a few less than serious
Okay,
questions
great.
left.
Yeah.
So serious ones. Boone Freeman asked if he was looking for a manual lathe to add to his shop, what brand or model would you recommend, or what should he be looking for?
So I'm going to get bashed for this, but I'm a bit of a fan of Japanese iron. So you want a rock solid machine that's bomb proof. Look at Morisiki's and Akuma manual lathes. These things are beasts. Um, so we had an Akuma LS at one shop, and so we used to describe this machine as a hard hinge that could take a cut. And so let me put that in perspective. And
You're gonna get some hate for that one.
yeah, I know, right? I know all the hard hinge guys are rolling over in their dovetail beds, right? So um, so yeah. Robin's sharpening his knife right now, right? So anyway, so this Akuma LS, I don't know, 15 horsepower, right? So you could take 300 thousandths aside on 304 or 316 stainless and just peel it off, right? The machine doesn't even care. Doesn't care. Just mows the stuff off, right? And then um, you know, take a semi roughing and then take a finish cut and be within 2/10 of where you thought you were going to be all day long. Okay. Machine doesn't care.
Wow.
Yeah. Machine doesn't care. So it's a hard hinge that can take a cut. That's how it got its name. Right. And with me anyway.
A hard hinge can do that in brass if you're lucky.
Yeah. Right. Ooh, some aluminum. Right. Now, we have a hard hinge in our little satellite shop in the building there where my office is, and it's a wonderful machine, and it's got its place, and I love it. I love threading on that thing. It's awesome to thread on, right? And but it kind of depends what you're doing. Um, that Akuma LS, it's basically like a 17-inch lathe, 17 by 60 lathe, right? So it's unlikely you're going to stick that in your 2-car garage, probably, right? So the other one I really like that you see for pretty good prices, Takasawa makes it's a TL 800, and it's about a 13 or 14-inch lathe, kind of short, maybe 40 inches between centers, something like that. It's got a foot brake, big, thick, heavy rib castings, nice industrial machine, but it's in a small package, and it's perfect for a home shop. And once again, it's well built. It's got hardened ways on it. So a lot of the Japanese machines have hardened ways, where American machines were soft ways, and a lot of them, and not all of them, but a lot of them have soft ways on them. And so that's a nice one. Monarchs are certainly nice machines too. And I mean, just a very fine machine, well built, and a pleasure to use. And generally more readily available in the U.S. There's a lot of them around. They kind of have small spindle holes, but there's a lot of different models to choose from. And so Monarchs are nice. I always kind of like LeBlancs too. So ran a lot of LeBlancs. But in general, just simple advice is buy as many pounds as you can afford. And so weight and mass are your friends when it's in machine tools. So whatever your space and pocketbook will tolerate, buy as much mass as you can get, and you will be the happiest. So if you buy a light, spindly little old South Bend and you're trying to machine stainless steel, you're just not going to be a very happy camper. Okay. And, and if you trade a little bit of money for some weight, you can, you guys, people watch us on YouTube and we're, God, he's parting off stainless. Oh my God, how is he doing that? And it's not causing problems. Well, I got a big, massive machine and it's super rigid and it doesn't care, right? And if you try to do that in a little Sheldon or a Logan hobby lathe, right? Yeah, you're going to have problems, right? I would have problems, right? I'd have to pull out some of my tricks to get that done on a lightweight machine, right? So a lot of people don't take that into consideration, and that would be my advice: is buy as much mass as you can afford, so or have space for. So
Okay.
yeah. Let's see which
And
one.
then K Crawford 708 asked, what brand is your machinist apron and where did you get it?
Oh, so I get that question a lot, and I even created a FAQ video that answers some of these questions, but nobody bothers to look for it. But that apron is a friend of mine. His name is Mitch Rosen, and he makes holsters, firearms holsters. So it's Mitch Rosen Extraordinary Gun Leather, and he's in New Hampshire, super nice guy. And he bought one of those little Takasawa lathes, right? I found one in a town about, I don't know, 40 miles from him, and sent him the Craigslist listing, and he went down there and texted me and took pictures while he was out there looking at the lathe, and then he ended up buying it, and he loves the machine. So, but anyway, he designed that apron and built some mainly for himself, and he sent me one as kind of an appreciation, which I love. I love the thing; it's great, and he sells them. They're kind of expensive because he doesn't make very many of them, so that's kind of off-putting for a lot of people. I think they're $150 or something like that, which is kind of a lot for an apron. But honestly, it's kind of a lifetime apron. You're not going to buy another one, and you can't wear it out, and it's pretty bomb proof. But yeah, Mitch Rosen, that's where you get them. And I don't know if he makes them to order or if he carries some in stock or not, but Mitch is a super nice guy. And if you're into firearms at all and I need leather, he's your man. It's just beautiful stuff. Every time one of his bags shows up here, it's he ships everything in these Ziploc bags, right? And you crack the bag open, and all the dyes and the leather tanning scent that comes out of that bag, it's like crack cocaine, man. It just smells so wonderful. You close the bag up and then you have another sniff a little while later. It's just great. And I've told him that, and he cracks up, and it's like, yeah, you got to bottle that stuff and sell it, man. It's really good. Yeah. So that's the apron story.
Another question we have from Robin Renzetti is, question for Tom: are you really as nice of a guy in person as Robin says you are?
I don't know. I mean, I tell you, Robin is an awesome guy, and I had some business back east. We were having a company do some work, and I traveled to Pennsylvania, and so I visited him in his shop, and I swear it was like we worked together for years. We immediately hit it off, and we were going a mile a minute. I don't know. We were there. We were there 4 or 5 hours or something like that, and it seemed like just a few minutes. And if he and I lived to get closer together, we'd be in trouble. We'd be working on a lot of different stuff together, I'm sure. So, yeah, I don't know. Robin's a hell of a nice guy, and I am in awe of his skills. He is the real deal, and I am puny in his presence, and that's for real. And I mean, I know a few things. He knows a few more things. It's he's that damn good. Okay, I mean, I put him up against pretty much anybody. So, and he probably wouldn't like to hear that. He's a pretty humble guy, and I think he also realized too that it was important for him to share some of his knowledge, right? That it was really the right thing to do, and he has been really good at that. And I've learned a ton from him, right? I mean, he does stuff, and I go, God dang it, why didn't I think of that, man? Holy cow, I've been doing it this dumb way for so long, and then he just has that way about him. He says, "Oh, that's an illegal operation," and it just cuts you right to the bone, right? So it's yeah, but he's pretty cool.
I think that's our new T-shirt, Dylan.
Yeah,
no,
yeah, that's an illegal operation.
that's an illegal operation, right? That's a T-shirt, man. I'm telling you, Robin. If you're listening, that's a damn T-shirt. I'm telling you, that's an illegal operation by Robin, right? You know, Robin says.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
So, our last question comes from Jody from Machinist Therapy Hotline. You had mentioned you listened to him
Oh,
just before we started,
Jody
and his
Plugwell.
are it's a two-part question. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So his first question was many, many, many years ago. I guess one many for every 10 years. You wrote a book called Sink or Swim. My question is, can you actually swim?
Yes, I can actually, Jody, and so Jody's a cool cat. He's actually been out to my shop here, and they let him out of his cage down there in New Zealand. And for those of you that don't know where New Zealand is, that's the South Island of Australia, and they hate that. So actually, the guy I served my sheet metal apprenticeship with was a Kiwi, and interesting guy. Yeah, I can swim. Used to scuba dive a lot, actually, pretty heavy duty. So I traveled all over the world and scuba dove and did wreck diving and deep diving, decompression diving, that kind of stuff. And I haven't gone in a while. I've been yeah, I don't know. When's the last time I went swimming? That's quite a while ago. So you know what, Cody, I don't know if I can still swim. I can certainly float, and I'll have to come down and visit and see if I can actually still swim. So yeah.
There you go. And the second part of his question was, as a prolific wearer of shorts in the workplace, have you ever considered becoming a knee model?
Oh no, I never knew that was actually an option. So it's yeah, Jody's a
It sounds like he's into it.
he's
So
into it. Yeah, Jody's into a lot of things. So and watch out and just be careful. And yeah, knee model. I didn't know they had such a thing. I don't know. My knees aren't that nice. I don't think so. My calves are much nicer. So yeah. Yeah.
Well, that I think wraps most of our questions up. But if usually we give our guests, a little bit of time at the end to plug, all your socials, and if there's any
Oh yeah.
parting words for our listeners that you want to impart.
Let's see. Let's see. Let me look at my list real
Don't
quick
buy
because
Hardens.
I had a couple of things here. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
Let's see. Actually, some of these were actually commentary. I listened to one of your podcasts, and you were talking about material suppliers. You were talking about actually you were whining about the cost of spare parts. That was the other thing you guys were talking about. And what was the other thing? So yeah, I'll just touch on those real quick. I don't remember which one it was. 17.4 in heat treated condition. Looking for pieces of that or small pieces. Which one of you was that?
Yeah, that was me.
That was you. McMaster
Dylan, that
sells
was
it
me.
in
Yeah.
H1150 and H900 condition, so you can buy a 1 foot rod of several different diameters. So next day shipping, they have it all in stock. So a lot of people,
Oh, awesome. That's great
yeah,
to know.
McMaster's not the cheapest place around, but that isn't always the driving force when you need a piece of material. As you mentioned, some of the normal supply chains, you got to buy a minimum charge or whatever, and it goes through this whole process, and it takes you 3 days to get a quote, and then it's another 3 days before it ships or whatever, and it doesn't really do you much good as a small business owner. So a lot of times, yeah, you're willing to pay a premium price and have it the next day, and you can really service your customer properly, right? So, and you just kind of plow it into the cost of the job, right? And so anyway,
Totally.
I encourage people to get a hold of a printed McMaster catalog, because when you open the printed catalog, you discover things that you didn't know you needed, or that you didn't know existed. And so if you don't know that they exist, how can you even search for them, right? So the argument is, oh, well, I'll just go on the internet and search for it. Well, if you don't know what it's called or even if it exists, how do you find it, right? But when you flip through the catalog, it's kind of this random process, and you see these things and you go, oh my God, I didn't know they had a gearbox that could change angles while it was running, and the two output shafts could change angles. I didn't know such a thing existed. Well, it does, and there it is, right? um, so I encourage people to get their hands on even a year old one or whatever, and just kind of flip through it, and you will discover things. So your power and your expertise is a lot of the things that or that are available, or how you apply them, right? And so just kind of having those things in your memory bank. You're sitting in a meeting with a client and you're trying to figure out how to do something, and you go, oh yeah, I remember seeing this gearbox that you can change angles with, blah blah blah. Yeah, I think I got an idea for you, right? And boom, now you got a job, right? And you're off and running. So knowledge is important. Keep learning, never stop learning, and take time to learn. You guys are pretty young, right? And but make time to educate yourselves too, right? To learn more about your trade and your craft, and your vocation, right? And it will pay you back 100 times over. And so you know, I it, I know sometimes you just got to get in there and work, right? But having the discipline to read articles and learn about new technologies, and don't be a Wisconsin ice cutter, right? Don't get stuck in today and now, right? So there was that, and then
Definitely. Yeah.
the other undertone that I was hearing that I just wanted to comment on. You guys were talking about. Um, uh, Basically, I condensed it down to why are spare parts so expensive, right? And or repairs and things like that. And I've heard this one a lot actually. And you call Akuma or you call Haas, and you go, hey, I need a new window for my VF4 or whatever, and they go, oh yeah, that's $600. And you go, it's a stinking piece of plastic. Why is it so much, right? What the hell, right? And it doesn't make any sense, right? But uh, uh, I'll put it in my perspective, right? Is so they got that part sitting on the shelf, and they got like 6 of them or 8 of them or 10 of them or whatever they have there, right? And it's sitting in a warehouse that they're paying per square foot to have, and it's just sitting there. Nobody's using it. It's just sitting there waiting for one of you guys to call to order the thing. And then every month, some little guy goes out there with his clipboard and he goes, oh, yeah, let's see, how many windows are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, there's 6 windows. And he writes it on his little clipboard, and he goes back and he puts it in the computer and says, we have 6 in inventory. And then meanwhile, they'll sit on the shelf every month for I don't know how long. And then they come out with new models and they add more parts to the inventory and all that. So there is not a zero cost to having those in stock, right? And in fact, if you look at the mathematics behind it, right, they should actually be charging more for those every month. So there's a price when they first put it on the shelf, and there should be actually another price for it when it's been on that shelf for 5 years, right? And so that's one of the reasons that spare parts are expensive. Is there's a little guy that wants his $100,000 a year to work there, keeps track of it, and they pay for the warehouse space. And sure, you can cut a piece of plastic yourself and do all that, and probably do it a hell of a lot cheaper. And a lot of people do that. But a lot of companies and businesses, the time is much more important to them, and so they'll pay that $600 for that piece of plastic, and they'll be running in a day, and not have to divert one of their workers or whatnot to make one or something like that. Now, when you guys are small and it's just you in your shop, sure, that makes sense. That's a good way to save money. Is it the best use of your time? At that moment in time, probably, right? And but when you have employees that want to get paid too, that's probably not the best use of your time. It's probably money well spent to pay the $600 and just get the window and get running again as quickly as you can, right? And that's all I wanted to say was a lot of people don't think about those kind of behind the scenes costs of keeping those inventories for many different machines and keeping them at your beck and call for years and years on end. And it's not a zero cost game. It's well beyond the cost of the making of that part. And so, yeah, but I've done what you've done, is cut the damn piece of plastic and stick it in there myself and just get it done and get going. And I've done that too when I've been shocked by a distributor's price on something. So anyway, that's all I got. So Tom's two
That's a good
cents.
point. Yeah.
But not that you're doing anything wrong or anything. So anyway, that's all I got. So I'll be at IMTS. OxTools will be at IMTS. And you can catch me on Instagram, OxTools. And of course, my YouTube channel is OxTool Co. And thanks for having me on your show, guys. This was a lot of fun. And I got to talk about myself a lot. And that always feels good.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Tom.
Guy, yeah.
That's one thing we love about having guests on is we don't want to take up time just talking. Like they hear us every other week talking, so it's great to hear our guests kind of go through more in-depth questions of what people really want to know.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll do it again sometime because and then focus on some stories, because that's to me, that's one of the oral traditions in this business, right? Is you tell stories, right? Like, for example, I'm sure both of you guys have a drill press story of some sort, right? And because almost everybody has a horror story on the drill press. And so I've got a lifetime of kooky stories of machines that we built and crazy stuff I've seen in the shop that's pretty entertaining stuff. So maybe we'll save some of that for another podcast.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back on and do some story time with Tom.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll do another one. All right, guys.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Tom.
You bet. My pleasure.